Hi there, my name's Amista, and I do psychic mentoring for people who are interested in delving into their own psychic abilities. The video that I'm doing today is one that actually is just a bird's eye view of the astrological associations with the tarot cards, with the major arcana specifically, actually. So let's just jump right in. The first card, the Fool, indicates Uranus or is associated with Uranus. And Uranus is the planet of rebellion and revolution. And so the Fool, for me, talks about a leap of faith. This is something that's unexpected. It doesn't necessarily make sense just yet, but we know that it's the right thing to do. And Uranus is the planet of surprises, things that sort of come out of the blue. And of course, also high technology. And many times, high technology takes the world by surprise. The second card, the Magician, indicates Mercury. And Mercury is all about speed, it's all about communication. Mercury sometimes can be associated with vehicles, but definitely communication, I think, is the more common thing for us to associate with Mercury. For me, the Magician is all about creating those things that we want to create in our lives and actually doing what it takes to create those. And many times that does have to do with communication. It's using what we have at hand to create what we want. And so, very interesting how that's associated with Mercury. I probably wouldn't have known that until I started looking at this. And by the way, a lot of this information is coming from notes that I took while reading and studying a book called Tarot and Astrology. And the subtitle is Enhance Your Readings with the Wisdom of the Zodiac. It's by Corinne Kenner. It's been out a little while, and if I put a picture of this in the video, you'll see that a dog that I was dog sitting at one point actually sort of gnawed on my book while they were teething. So that's what happens when you leave your books out handy so you can read them. Anyway, let's move on to the High Priestess. This is a card that is associated with the moon, which always kind of surprises me. I hear people talk about the High Priestess being Pisces. I just think of the High Priestess really as any water sign normally, because it's all about the empathy and the intuition, and water signs, have that reputation of really being big on that, although that is changing as we go through time. More people are getting awakened to their own intuition, which I think is very exciting. So anyway, the High Priestess is associated with the moon, which is female, and it's about reflection and about intuition. And the Empress is associated with Venus. Big surprise, right? Because she's our card that talks about fertility and creativity. So the Empress is associated with Venus. And Venus is the planet of love and attraction, and also the things that we value. So can be some very tangible things when we look at the things that we value, and many times also relationships as well. Next, we're looking at the Emperor. Emperor is indicating Aries, or associated with Aries, which is a sign of leadership. Aries is the first sign in the zodiac. And they are usually naturally leaders. Of course, that depends what else is in their chart. But normally, they naturally step into leadership positions. Now, we're looking at the Hierophant. Hierophant is associated with Taurus, with the deeper traditions, the senses of stability, luxury, pleasure, earth sign stuff there, but definitely about traditional things as well. A lot of times this can talk about ceremonies. Many times the Hierophant will indicate a marriage. Sometimes it'll indicate things like First Communion or baptism or last rites or any other ceremonies. Like, I'm familiar with a lot of the Catholic ceremonies because that's how I grew up, but the Hierophant can also indicate ceremonies from other traditions, other religious traditions as well. And also, The Hierophant represents doing things in a traditional way. Now, Lovers is associated with the Gemini, that duality of thought, duality of communication. Geminis really can swing from seeing something one way to another way. They have that flexibility in their thought, and they're very comfortable with looking at things from all different angles. And the Lovers really talks about that duality of thought, that seeing things from somebody else's perspective as well as from our own. And also, Lovers is associated too with decision making. Excuse me. I'm not sure exactly how that plays out with Gemini, but the ancient meaning of the Lovers card was tied in with making decisions. So let's see, and air signs, they're pretty good at thinking things through logically to come to a logical decision. Now let's look at the Chariot. The Chariot is, the protected home on wheels. Sometimes the Chariot can very literally indicate things like camper trailers or campers or RVs, anything like that. A lot of times the Chariot can indicate going on vacation, kind of home away from home. It can indicate any kind of travel, really, especially long distance travel. It's also a really positive card that talks about teamwork and working together with somebody. This can be a card actually that even talks about a successful marriage, a marriage that's going well, where two people are on the same page and reaching common goals together. Because when we travel, we're shooting for a destination. And if we're going together, that can be indicated by the Chariot. But also a nice solid marriage can be indicated by the Chariot as well. It is associated with Cancer. And Cancers are associated with the home, the crab, the home on the back, that type of thing. Cancer is also associated with motherhood and family life. So the Chariot can be associated with that as well. Like I said, a nice successful marriage, good solid family life, that type of thing. Our next card is Strength. And Strength is interesting because it's not about brute force. You can look at the card and see nobody's intimidating anybody in this card. This is more about gentle force and control. This is assigned to Leo. And of course, it has to do with courage, and it has to do with, doing things motivated by the heart, having that big heart that allows us to stand up for those things that we believe in and to exert force in a way that is caring to stand up for those things that we believe in or to accomplish those things that we believe in. Also, when I think of strength, I think about the idea of strong self-esteem, self-confidence, understanding our place in the universe, really. Now, the Hermit, astrologically associated with Virgo, which is the sign of responsibility. Virgo is basically the servant out of the astrological signs. With the Hermit, this is our quiet leader. This is somebody who leads by example more than by cracking the whip, and really leads by service, dedicated to serving others, to empower them to do those things that they're good at. And then we have the Wheel of Fortune. Now, this is astrologically associated with Jupiter, which is our planet of luck and expansion and growth, expanding our horizons. So this can be about travel. This can also be about learning new things, either way of expanding our horizons. And also, a lot of times we see it talking about opportunities coming into us when the Wheel of Fortune shows up, that maybe we've already done the prep work, we've already done the learning, we've already done the expansion, to be able to use those opportunities in a way that's good for everyone involved. Next card is Justice. Now, Justice is astrologically associated with the sign of Libra, and Libra is all about equality, fairness, and social grace, which is, really ties in a lot with what I was always taught about the Justice Tarot card, which talks about, the law, things having to do with the law, and people making decisions regarding things that we're doing out in the social world, at our workplace or in our families, things that we do that impact other people and decisions around that. So really, I think social grace, I was kind of surprised to see that, but it fits actually quite well. It's that grace that we have in society to do the right thing and to enforce the right thing, even if needed, when it's working well. Next, we're looking at the Hanged Man. And here we see the Hanged Man. They talk about that he's suspended in an alternate reality. I often think of him as looking at things from all kinds of different angles to allow him to make a good decision moving forward. But they associate the Hanged Man with Neptune, which is the planet of mysticism and also the planet of illusion. So with that in mind, the Hanged Man sometimes could actually be talking about this idea of not seeing things very clearly. There being some information that is warped or twisted or not even in the person's mind as they are suspended in the Hanged Man situation. But it's also mysticism. And so mysticism would be kind of the flip side of that, where we're understanding things from a higher perspective, a deeper perspective. And so that's interesting. To me, I would see that as, with it coming in right side up, I would see it more of looking at things from a higher mystical perspective of how would a situation benefit everybody. And the flipped side might be more of, oh man, there's some illusions going on here. Although normally I have to say I read the Hanged Man as we have found our solution, now we're taking action. But I could see it also playing out like this too. Let's see. Next, we're moving on to Death. Death is associated with Scorpio. And Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, who is the ruler of the underworld. So that's why Death is, so aptly associated with Scorpio. And Scorpio is the sign of death. It's the sign of sex. It's the sign of transformation. And it's also the sign of other people's money. So this can be inheritance, which is associated with death, but it's also other people's money. This can also be taking out loans or giving out loans, other people's money, once again. This can be about money of our partner, if we have a partner in life. And this can be money about maybe if we have investors into a company. This would be, this could all easily be associated with that Death card and with Scorpio. And then we have Temperance. Temperance straddles the divide between two worlds, and it's associated with Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a sign of long-distance travel. It's the sign of foreign cultures or people from foreign cultures. It's the sign of philosophy. It's the sign of education. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which talks about that expansion in the education. So we can see how that Sagittarius, really ties in with some of the things that we have going on in this card of Temperance. Let's see. And also Temperance, because it's associated with Sagittarius, would have to do with philosophy as well. And I often see Temperance associated with patience. It takes some time to learn some new things. It takes some time to get from point A to point B if it's, 5,000 miles away, that long distance travel. And philosophy takes some time to develop and some experiences. to see how it actually pans out in the world. So Sagittarius, also a card that I see of patience, even though it's not really mentioned in my notes. Next, we're looking at the Devil. Now, the Devil is interesting. It is associated with the sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn is a sign that is ruled by Saturn, which talks about time and the passing of time. It also talks about business and career and success, worldly status, our reputation, especially when it comes to our careers. What is it that we do? What is our calling? What is our way of making a living? All of that ties in with our reputation, which ties in with Capricorn, and that comes in with the Devil. Now, the other thing that the Devil really shows is physical and material temptations. This can be addictions. This can be obsessions. With the Devil card, sometimes we can be looking at people who have workaholic stuff going on, or maybe they have addictions to substances that don't really belong in our bodies happening. And then obsessions too. This can be the other thing that I see the Devil with, although I can't say I normally would associate this with Capricorn, but for me, when I look at the Devil, this has to do with fear. And I think the fears are what drive people into the temptations and into the addictions and maybe the obsessions, because I think all of those are really motivated by this need to escape from whatever reality is, maybe escape from the reputation that we have, or escape from the reputation that we have for ourselves. How do we view ourselves? So for me, the Devil is really about that fear, that need to escape. Many times whenever I look at it, it's really, I see it as anything toxic. So I think, it's kind of a shame that it's associated with Capricorn, because I don't know that Capricorns are so toxic necessarily. In fact, I would say that the ones I've known have not been, for the most part, not any more than any other human. So I think it's kind of a shame that we associate Capricorn with the Devil. But we do. And I hear it all the time. Let's see. Tower is our next card. And when the Tower, this is associated with Mars. And when we think about a tower is, there's somebody perpetually guarding the city that the tower is near. And the tower is perpetually guarded so that nobody infiltrates, so that somebody is always looking out for that city. The tower is going to be kind of the first thing whenever something comes under attack. You want to take out the eyes so that nobody is alerting anybody in the town that somebody would be coming in. So the tower really is associated with the front lines. It's where the action is happening, whether it's in a wartime situation or whether it's in some changes that we're making in everyday life. The tower is kind of on the front lines. And so it is associated, like I said, with Mars. Well, Mars is the planet of energy. That Mars is the planet of oppression. It's the planet of war and assertiveness. So the tower is, generally, I see the tower as this card that does talk about destruction of something, whether it's a way of thinking, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a work situation. To me, I see it as the destruction of something that brings us some kind of security and stability because of its association with Mars. And a lot of times that destruction happens quickly. It happens in an upheaval. This is not we're taking something apart brick by brick. This is, the lightning strike. It happens quickly. And, that lightning strike of Mars, all that concentrated energy. And I also see the tower as, something coming apart, being blown apart maybe, that really no longer served us, or maybe the foundation was never built correctly to start with. And so now we see that it's coming apart, And when it comes apart, it allows us this opportunity to rebuild stability and security into our lives in a way that is more well thought out and more thorough. We can learn from the mistakes of the past, and we can make this stability more solid and more durable. So, but it's associated with the planet of Mars, which is concentrated energy, basically. It's, if you think about a lightning strike or an explosion, this is Mars type of energy. Okay, so next we're looking at the star, and the star is associated with Aquarius. It indicates the light of hope, inspiration. Many times it brings in healing. And it's the sign of, Aquarius is the sign of social groups and of futuristic thinking. Remember, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is that, the highest tech, the most futuristic type of things. So also along with social groups, this can be healing of like generational things. This can be healing of groups, healing of families, healing of communities. This can even be healing of the land. Aquarius is hope and inspiration. So, like where Chernobyl happened, Aquarius would be the healing of the land over time. Way more time than we would like it to take, but still that is slowly being healed over time. Let's see, the moon card. Now, the moon rules the night, and it can talk about things happening in the evening. I've seen that several times. It's also associated with Pisces, which is the sign of the mystical and of the subconscious. Pisces is a sign that talks about our mental health, the status of our mental health. Is it okay or not okay? It's also a sign of, the subconscious really leads to what is our mental health like, and the mystical. And it's interesting to me because with Pisces ruling both of those, a lot of times when people thought they were psychic, even not that far back, even in the 1950s, when people thought they were psychic, others considered them cray-cray, and they would even be sent into institutions and many times even given lobotomies, because if somebody was mystical and had intuitive abilities, the world didn't know what to do with that. And so they lumped that in with, not with it, crazy. So it's interesting to me that actually is all under Pisces, the sign of the subconscious and the mystical together. So the moon rules the night. It also rules the mystical. It rules the subconscious. Sometimes when we have the moon card come up, it's coming up because we're realizing that there's an old trigger that's been buried in our subconscious that we need to deal with, or we need to reroute some neural pathways in our subconscious. And then with the mystical, that can talk about this idea of being in touch with that divine spark that is within each one of us as well. So very interesting. Moon card a lot of time, is interpreted as illusion when it comes in right side up. When it comes in reverse, for me, that talks about the idea that the truth is coming to the surface. So a lot of times that's talking about, we realize we need to do some self-work. Not always, but sometimes. Now, we're going to move on to the sun. And the sun is considered the sustainer of life. It is obviously associated with the sun, source of energy and enlightenment. Where Mars is like that lightning energy or the explosive energy, the sun is more of that constant, more steady, more stable version of energy. Yes, there are sometimes the solar flares that can impact how we feel, but generally, as a baseline, the sun is that energy is much more stable than Martian type of energy. So when we see the sun card, it talks about that energy, that stable baseline of solid, good energy. To me, the sun talks about honesty. It talks about the integrity that people can have. It talks about doing those things that make us feel productive and happy and that are empowering. And maybe not just for ourselves, maybe they're also empowering for other people as well. Many times they are. And so it talks about these really positive experiences whenever I see the sun card show up. Now, next we're going to look at judgment. And judgment, for me, growing up Catholic, judgment has to do with the idea of when everybody rises from the dead in Revelations at the end of the world when Jesus comes back. And this is sort of similar to this. It's ruled by or associated with the planet Pluto, which rules death and resurrection. Pluto also rules unavoidable change. And so with this resurrection, that's really where I see this the most is the death and resurrection as far as interpretation on this card. A lot of times the judgment card talks about something from the past that we thought we were done with making its appearance in our lives, and we need to decide, are we going to put energy and effort back into that, the old thing from the past or not, whether it's a relationship or a type of work that we used to be a part of, or maybe even working for the same company that we used to work for. So something from the past that has the potential to be resurrected. Usually for me, if the judgment card comes in right side up, I know that we're going to resurrect that thing from the past. We're going to put our energy and effort into it. If the judgment card comes up in reverse, for me, that says the opportunity is there, but we decide that we don't want to reinvest in whatever that was. And then last card, last but not least, as they say, the world card. And the world card does talk about the completion of a cycle. It is astrologically associated with Saturn, and Saturn is the ringed planet. It's associated with boundaries. Saturn is associated with discipline and boundaries and kind of guardrails, wanted or unwanted sometimes, limits and structures and limitations. And so for me, the world talks about completing some kind of cycle. The world comes up many, many, many times when somebody is graduating, whether they're graduating from kindergarten or whether they're graduating from the highest levels of college or university. Saturn will come up to show an ending of that cycle. And it's an ending of a cycle that had some structures and some limitations. While this person was studying, they weren't able to go out and get a job yet on what they were studying. In most cases, they are limited. And even if they were able to get a job on what they're studying, they can only work so many hours because obviously they have to finish the schoolwork and get their degree. So that's a perfect example of a world card. It talks about the end of that cycle of limitation and restriction. I've also seen Saturn come up to end, like if somebody goes from a cycle of, with their romantic interest, maybe they go from a cycle of, we're just kind of dating, we're getting to know each other, but, not really anything exclusive. Then the world can come up to indicate the ending of that cycle of really restricted relationship, like this is our little box here. We're just getting to know each other and that's it. And it can indicate moving into a cycle of, okay, well now we're exclusive and we are really focusing on getting to know each other and getting to know if we want to spend, a lot more time together or the rest of our lives together or not. So it can come up like that too. But really it is associated with Saturn. So associated with limitations and structures and boundaries. So I hope that you guys found that interesting and helpful. If you did, please put a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You never know what I'm going to be putting up here next. But this is just part of the Come Study With Me series that I have, and I hope you guys got a lot out of it. Have a great day.